The rain fell lightly that night, as if the sky silently mourned all the secrets hidden in the small town's narrow streets. Helena walked through the wet alleys, a simple woman with calloused hands and a weary gaze, but with a dignity that time and poverty had failed to strip away. Helena had always believed that justice was something that, sooner or later, reached everyone. But that night, she had no idea that her own life would be turned upside down, dragged into a labyrinth of accusations and lies from which escape would be difficult. Helena worked as a housekeeper, caring for wealthy families in the area. She was known for her honesty, dedication, and the calm she exuded even on the most difficult days. She raised her young daughter, Anna Clara, alone after being abandoned by her husband, who never wanted to take responsibility. She lived with little, but she lived with honor. Each morning she walked long miles to the city center, carrying her cleaning supplies in a worn bag, smiling at her neighbors, even though her heart was weary from the daily struggles. That week, Helena had received an unusual invitation to work in a luxurious mansion she'd only seen by sight, so distant it seemed from her reality. It was the home of the Moretti family, one of the most powerful and wealthy clans in the region, owners of companies that generated millions and surrounded by an aura of respect, but also of fear. People spoke of them in whispers, as if the mere act of pronouncing their name were dangerous enough. Upon entering the mansion for the first time, Helena felt the weight of its grandeur. Crystal chandeliers shone brightly, the plush carpets muffled every step, and the walls displayed original artwork worth more than she could ever amass in a lifetime. But above all, there was something that caught her attention: the family heiress, a young woman named Isabella, only 17 years old. Isabella seemed to live in a gilded cage, surrounded by luxury, but with a lost look in her eyes, as if she were a prisoner of her own wealth. Helena approached her gently, always respectful, and within days an unexpected connection began to blossom. Isabella, accustomed to people who treated her as a status symbol, saw in Helena someone different, someone who saw her not as a millionaire heiress, but as a lonely young woman searching for true affection. The two chatted while Helena performed her chores, and little by little, Isabella began to trust her, confiding in her secrets, fears and desires she had never dared share with her own family. But it was precisely this rapprochement that would pave the way for the tragedy that was to come. One morning, the mansion was in chaos. Young Isabella had disappeared without a trace. The room was empty, the bed unmade, and the half-open window let in the cold early morning wind. Her desperate parents immediately called the police, and the news spread like wildfire. The millionaire heiress had been kidnapped. That same day, Helena, unaware of anything, arrived at the mansion for another day of work. As soon as she walked through the gate, she was met with hostile looks and veiled accusations. The police were already on the scene, taking statements and analyzing surveillance footage, and suddenly all eyes were on her. "You're too early," said one of the investigators, frowning, as if that detail was suspicious. Helena tried to explain that she always arrived early, that this was her routine, but her words seemed useless given the weight of the tragedy. A whisper spread through the halls. It was her, the cleaning lady. Who else could it be? In a matter of hours, Helena went from dedicated employee to prime suspect in Isabella's disappearance. Shock overwhelmed her. How could anyone believe that a humble woman barely able to pay her own bills would be capable of something so cruel? Indignation swelled in her chest, but with each question from the authorities, with each accusatory look from the Moretti family, her voice seemed to grow weaker, as if swallowed by an invisible web of injustice. Meanwhile, the tabloid media found the case a boon. Newspapers and television programs aired images of Helena being taken to testify, highlighting her humble origins, exploring every detail of her life as if it were evidence against her. "Housekeeper kidnaps millionaire heiress?" headlines blared, and the public, eager for stories that blended luxury and scandal, wasted no time choosing sides. Helena's daughter, Anna Clara, watched the news in astonishment. The girl, just 10 years old, couldn't understand how her mother, the kindest person she knew, could be accused of something so terrible. She wept in secret, fearing she would lose not only her mother, but also the security of the little they had together. Inside the police station, Helena was pressured for hours. Repetitive questions, cruel insinuations, and the constant suspicious looks of the officers made her feel like she was in a never-ending nightmare. "Where were you last night?" "At home with my daughter." "Is there anyone who can confirm?" "Only her." The answer was met with ironic smiles, as if a child's word had no value. Time passed, and the evidence seemed to mount against Helena. A security camera showed her leaving the mansion the previous afternoon, carrying a bag, which to her contained only rags and cleaning products, but to investigators could very well be hiding something more. A neighbor claimed to have heard footsteps that morning, and suddenly every irrelevant detail became evidence in her conviction. Helena felt cornered, like cornered prey. She tried to remain calm, tirelessly repeating her innocence, but the feeling of helplessness grew with each passing moment. She knew the system wasn't on her side. A humble woman against the word of a millionaire family was a nearly impossible battle to win. That first night in the cold police cell, tears streamed silently down Helena's face. She thought of Anna Clara, alone at home, scared, not understanding why her mother hadn't returned. She thought of Isabella, hoping she was alive and that at some point the truth would come out. And she thought of herself, wondering how life could be so unfair as to make her the villain in a story she'd always wanted to stay away from. But deep down, Helena felt she couldn't give up. Even if the whole world was against her, even if the truth seemed buried beneath layers of lies and self-interest, she had to fight. Not only for her innocence, but for her daughter, for the dignity she had always carried with her. And it was in that moment of darkness that a silent force was born within her, almost imperceptible, but powerful enough to keep her standing. Because no matter how much everyone believed her guilt, she knew the truth, and that truth would be her weapon, even if it cost everything to prove it. The imaginary camera zooms out, showing Helena alone, sitting on the cold floor of her cell while the city outside sleeps in silence, oblivious to the weight of the injustice that was beginning to unfold. The suspense builds, leaving a question that echoes in the minds of those following this story. If she is innocent, who is really behind the millionaire heiress's disappearance? And it is with this hook that the audience is hooked, wanting more, waiting for the next chapters to discover not only Helena's fate, but also the dark secrets surrounding the most powerful family in the city. And you, what would you do if you were wrongly accused of such a terrible crime? Leave your opinion in the comments, subscribe to the channel to follow every detail of this plot, and don't forget to like to support powerful stories like this. The metallic sound of the bars clanging behind Helena echoed in her mind like a constant hammer, reminding her that she was being treated like a criminal. The cold of the cell seemed to penetrate her bones, but nothing hurt more than the injustice inflicted upon her. That endless night, as she tried to find a comfortable position on the hard floor, one question kept repeating itself in her mind. Why her? Why had he become the target of such an absurd accusation? Across town, the press turned the millionaire heiress's disappearance into a spectacle. Newscasts opened with images of the Moretti mansion. Helicopters circled the property, and reporters crowded the gates trying to extract a statement from the family. With each passing hour, the story took on new, often distorted twists. Helena was painted as the perfect villain, a humble woman, supposedly resentful of the wealthy, who saw Isabella as a chance for revenge or easy money. While the whole country talked about it, Anna Clara, hidden behind the curtains of her small house, wept silently. The girl couldn't turn off the television, even when the news hurt her. She felt a mixture of fear and revolt. She knew her mother was innocent, but who would believe her? The world seemed intent on devouring her only family. The next morning, Helena was taken in for a longer interrogation. The police chief in charge of the case, a man with a deep voice and a closed expression named Dr. Albuquerque, looked at her with a mixture of suspicion and coldness. He was known for his rigidity, someone who believed that everyone was guilty of something. "Mrs. Helena," he began, dragging his words, "do you understand the gravity of what is happening?" "I understand, doctor, but I didn't do anything. I don't know where Isabella is. I just want her to be found alive." The delegate slammed his pen on the table in an irritated gesture. "Your closeness with the girl doesn't help your situation. We have testimony that Miss Isabella confided secrets to you." "What did they talk about?" "Girl things. She felt alone. She had no one to talk to. I just listened to her. There was nothing wrong with that." And why was her bedroom window found open on the night she disappeared? Helena took a deep breath, trying to control her tears. I don't know, Doctor. I wasn't there. I would never hurt Isabella. But each of her answers seemed to only fuel more doubts. The police chief leaned forward in his chair, studying her every gesture, as if searching for a sign of deception in her eyes. Meanwhile, the Morettis, sheltered in their mansion, avoided speaking to the press. Isabella's father, Augusto Moretti, a tough and ruthless businessman, publicly displayed a coolness, but inside he burned with rage, not only for his missing daughter, but also for the scandal damaging his image. For him, finding someone to blame quickly was essential to preserving the family business, and Helena was a perfect scapegoat. In the corridors of the police station, powerful lawyers began to appear, pressuring authorities to ensure the investigation produced results. The media clamored for justice, and in the midst of it all, Helena felt increasingly crushed, as if she were just a disposable piece in a much larger game. That same afternoon, something changed. An anonymous letter was left at the offices of a local newspaper. The content was disturbing, veiled threats and the assertion that Isabella was alive in the hands of those demanding silence. There was no ransom demand, just a warning. If you look too hard, she won't come back. The police tried to keep the information secret, but nothing escapes the public eye for long. Within hours, journalists were already speculating about the letters. Veracity. For Helena, the news was both a relief and a new torment. If Isabella was alive, there was hope. But how could they prove she had nothing to do with it? In her cell that night, Helena remembered the conversations she'd had with Isabella. She remembered a time when the young woman had confided in her that she wanted to run away from home. Isabella felt suffocated by her family's pressure, their constant stares, their controlled life. Sometimes I just wanted to disappear and be free, she said, tears in her eyes. Had the girl really run away? Was it not a kidnapping but a staged escape? Doubt gnawed at Helena, but it also gave her a glimmer of hope. If she could prove that Isabella had left voluntarily, perhaps she could clear the charge. However, the police seemed willing to ignore this possibility. For them, kidnapping was the most convenient scenario, and Helena was the perfect piece to fit into the puzzle. Days passed, and the pressure mounted. Protesters gathered in front of the police station, some demanding justice for the missing heiress, others already condemning Helena without trial. Her image was splashed across newspapers with cruel headlines. The woman who betrayed the heiress's trust, from day laborer to kidnapper, the fall of Helena. Anna Clara, taken to the police station by sympathetic neighbors, tried to see her mother. When she finally managed to get a quick meeting, she hugged Helena with all the strength she had. "Mommy, I believe in you. Don't let them bring you down, please." Helena held her daughter's face, trying to convey a courage she no longer felt. "I'm going to get out of here, my love, I promise." It was at that moment that something unexpected happened. A young reporter named Daniel began investigating the case on his own. Unlike his colleagues who were only seeking scandalous headlines, Daniel realized there were many inconsistencies in the accusation against Helena. He began combing through files, speaking with employees at the mansion, and observing details that the police seemed to overlook. He discovered, for example, that sections of the mansion's cameras had been mysteriously erased on the night of her disappearance. He also discovered that Isabella had tried to access information about bus and train tickets days before her disappearance. These facts suggested a possible planned escape, but no one wanted to pay attention to it. Daniel then decided to visit Helena in prison. He obtained permission to interview her, claiming it was part of a news report. As he sat across from her, he was struck by the serenity in her tired eyes. "Mrs. Helena, I don't believe you're guilty. Is there anything you want to tell me that you haven't already told the police?" Helena hesitated. For days she had been treated like a liar, like a criminal, but there was something in that young journalist's gaze that conveyed confidence. Isabella talked about running away. She said she wanted to disappear, that she couldn't stand living in that house anymore. I tried to convince her not to do anything wrong, but maybe she went ahead. Daniel wrote down every word, convinced that there was a much bigger story behind this tragedy. Meanwhile, inside the Moretti mansion, secrets began to pile up. Isabella's father hid compromising liaisons. Her mother, fragile and submissive, seemed to maintain silences that screamed and the young woman's brothers, always distant, avoided discussing their turbulent relationship with her. Helena, still in her cell, dreamed every night of Isabella calling for help. But when she woke, the reality was cruel. She was still imprisoned, with no prospect of freedom. Each day seemed to steal a shred of hope from her, but the memory of her daughter gave her strength. Daniel, in turn, began to face pressure. His editors wanted him to follow the line of other newspapers, painting Helena as guilty. But he insisted something was wrong. He even received anonymous calls warning him not to prod too much. The case was touching on interests that went far beyond a simple disappearance. And so while the entire city watched the tragedy unfold like a spectacle, the real plot remained in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. With each chapter of this story, the mystery deepened, and at the center of it all, the human drama of a woman fighting not only for her innocence, but for her dignity, against a system that seemed to have already decided her fate. At the end of Part 2, the tension reaches a fever pitch. Helena receives news that she will be formally charged and brought to trial. At the same time, Daniel discovers a crucial clue, a note hidden in Isabella's room, written by the young woman herself, that could change the course of the entire investigation. And so the audience is left in suspense. Will the note save Helena, or will the Moretti family's power be strong enough to suppress the truth? The courthouse was packed. Since the early hours of the morning, people had gathered in front of the building, some carrying signs demanding justice for Isabella, others shouting hateful words against Helena. The case was no longer just a criminal proceeding. It had become a spectacle, fodder for sensationalist news reports, and the public's insatiable appetite for tragedy. Helena was brought in handcuffed, surrounded by police officers. Her appearance betrayed sleepless nights and accumulated anguish, but there was something in her gaze that conveyed a dignity that was hard to erase. Outside, cameras captured her every step, turning her arrival into a live headline. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was stifling. The judge, a stern-faced man, tried to maintain order, but he knew this trial would be more political than legal. The defense attorney, a modest professional who worked with the causes of humble people, seemed dwarfed by the prosecution team hired by the Morettis. When Helena was invited to sit down, she felt the weight of all eyes on her. Among the crowd, he spotted Anna Clara, sitting in the back row, her eyes teary and her hands trembling. The girl gave him a small wave, as if to say, "Don't give up." The prosecutor began his speech with a theatrical tone. He paced the room as if on stage, his voice firm, each word carefully chosen to paint Helena as a monster, disguised as a simple woman. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are faced with a case that shocks our society. A woman, driven by envy and ambition, took advantage of the trust of a defenseless young woman to plot her disappearance. Helena was not just an employee of the Moretti family, she was someone the victim trusted, and precisely for that reason, the crime is even more perverse." As the prosecutor spoke, Helena shrank in her chair. Her hands trembled, but she took deep breaths to keep from crying. On the other side, the defense attorney waited patiently. When his turn came, he stood up with a less theatrical posture, but with a firm, almost paternal voice. "Your Honor, jurors, don't be fooled by the appearances created by the prosecution. My client is a simple, hard-working woman who dedicated years of her life to serving this family. There is not a single piece of concrete evidence that she kidnapped Isabella. What we're dealing with here is haste, pressure, and prejudice against someone who lacks wealth, but has dignity." His words brought a brief silence to the room, but the impact seemed small compared to the Moretti's media power. In the middle of the hearing, Daniel, the young reporter, watched everything closely. He carried with him the note found in Isabella's room, but he still didn't have enough evidence to officially present it. He needed more. He needed to piece it together before it was too late. When Helena was called to testify, the atmosphere became even more tense. Her voice was low but sincere. "I would never hurt Isabella. I loved her like she was my own daughter. She would come to tell me things, to vent. She said she felt trapped in that house. I don't know where she is, but I pray every day that she's alive." The prosecutor quickly attacked her. "Can you prove that you were not with the victim on the night she disappeared?" "I was at home with my daughter." "Is your daughter your only witness?" Helena lowered her eyes. She knew that Anna Clara's testimony would mean little to them. the audience murmured, and the judge had to call for silence several times. Helena's every word, every gesture, was dissected by journalists broadcasting live, and her image was already etched in the collective imagination. For many, she was guilty even before the verdict. Meanwhile, Daniel continued his investigations. He spoke with former employees of the mansion, who revealed disturbing details. A gardener confided that he had heard frequent arguments between Isabella and her father, Augusto. A housekeeper said the girl had been forbidden to leave the house weeks before her disappearance as a way to correct her rebellious behavior. These accounts reinforced the idea that Isabella was not the perfect daughter, portrayed in the interviews, but rather a young woman suffocated by a controlling family. Daniel realized there was a hidden agenda, and that perhaps Isabella had planned her escape. Back in court, the prosecution presented photos of Isabella's open bedroom window, claiming it was proof that Helena had facilitated the young woman's escape. But the defense attorney questioned, if Helena had kidnapped the girl, why would she leave the window open as evidence? Wouldn't it be more logical to close it so as not to arouse suspicion? This point caused murmurs among the jury, but the prosecutor quickly shifted the focus to the financial motives that, according to him, led Helena to commit the crime. Outside, the press fueled the kidnapping narrative. Headlines carried phrases like, "The farce of the humble woman" and "Helena and her web of lies." With each edition, her image was distorted, and Anna Clara was bullied at school, hearing classmates call her mother a criminal. The night after the trial, Helena, lying on the thin mattress in her cell, closed her eyes and heard Isabella's voice in her mind saying, "Sometimes I wish I could disappear, Helena. No one will ever understand that." The memory brought him both pain and hope. Meanwhile, Daniel was awake. He was obsessed with gathering evidence before it was too late. He decided to revisit Isabella's room. He encountered resistance but gained access, claiming he needed footage for a news special. There, amidst expensive furniture and impeccable decor, he noticed something strange, a notebook partially hidden behind books. Leafing through it, he found notes from the young woman describing escape plans, places she wanted to go, and disturbing phrases like, "If I disappear, they will never look in the right places." This discovery was crucial, but how could he present it without being swallowed up by the Moretti manipulation machine? The next day, Daniel decided to publish a preliminary article on an independent blog, revealing excerpts from the diary. The news quickly went viral, dividing opinions. For some, it confirmed the possibility of voluntary escape. For others, it was just further proof that Helena had influenced her. When the defense tried to use the matter to request more time for the investigation, the judge was reluctant, but agreed to postpone the sentencing. This small respite gave Helena hope. For the first time in weeks, she felt that perhaps she wasn't alone. But the Moretti family reacted furiously. Augusto pressured editors, threatened media outlets, and used all his influence to discredit Daniel. In closed meetings, he even stated that a scapegoat is necessary to maintain order. As the court prepared for new hearings, public opinion was divided. Some called for Helena's swift conviction, while others began to doubt the official narrative. And at the center of it all loomed an increasingly deepening mystery. Where was Isabella? In the final scene of Part 3, Helena receives an unexpected visitor in prison. A woman with a firm gaze and a weary expression asks to speak with her in private. As she approaches, she whispers, "I know the truth about Isabella, and I know you're innocent." The suspense keeps the audience hooked, anxious for what will happen next, feeling the weight of the drama and the urgency to discover the next plot twist. The woman who asked to speak to Helena had the eyes of someone who'd cried alone more than once. Her temporary prison badge hung from a cheap ribbon and trembled along with her hands. When the officer took 2 steps away, keeping her distance to keep watch without listening, the visitor leaned over the metal table, lowered her voice and said her own name as if confessing a secret. "My name is Ligia Andrade. I worked at the Moretti mansion for 4 years. They fired me 3 months ago, and I know you didn't kidnap Isabella." Helena felt a chill that didn't come from the frigid air of the visiting room, but from a nearly forgotten spark. "Hope. Why?" she whispered, more out of fear of breaking the spell than distrust. Ligia swallowed hard, glanced quickly at the door, and continued, "Because she looked for me 2 nights before she disappeared. Using a cell phone no one in the family knew she had. She said she couldn't take it anymore, that her father was going to send her to a therapy boarding school in Switzerland, far from everything, far from everyone, and that if she didn't leave that week, she'd never leave again. Helena stood still, feeling only the blood pounding in her ears. She told you about me, she ventured. She did. She said she'd tell you when she was away so as not to put you at risk, and she asked me for one simple thing: advice on how to disappear without leaving a trace on cards or apps. I didn't help her escape. I just told her not to use the family card, to buy the ticket at the bus station in cash and not to look back. You know what? I saw her. The word saw echoed between them, huge. Where? Helena asked, her voice trembling. At the Aurora terminal, 10:30 at night. I'd planned to leave a coat and cap for her so she'd go unnoticed. She was wearing a small backpack, her hair tied back and her glasses were prescription-free. She got on the bus to Villa do Farol, 4 hours and 40 to the coast. I saw her get on, Helena. The room seemed to shrink. The memory of Isabella's diary, of Daniel's escape notes, flashed through Helena's mind like a bolt of confirmation. Why didn't you tell the police about this before? She asked, with a mixture of relief and indignation. Ligia lowered her eyes. Because I signed a confidentiality agreement when I was fired, because their lawyer called me and made it clear that if I opened my mouth, I would regret it, and because I received 2 anonymous messages with photos of my son at school. I froze. Helena tried to reach out, but the handcuffs on the chair bar prevented it. And why now? Because when I read that reporter's text, Daniel, I understood that I would carry your arrest on my shoulders if I continued to remain silent. And because Isabella sent me a message the night before she disappeared. I still have the audio, Helena. It's her voice, talking about the bus, about her fear, asking no one to follow her. I saved everything, with the date and time. Helena's tears finally welled up, but she blinked hard. Can you give this to my lawyer? Ligia took a deep breath. Yes, but there's a problem. I brought a flash drive. I couldn't get in with it. The searches here are strict. I didn't want to risk it being confiscated, so I used another option. I left an envelope in a station locker. Aurora Station, Locker 23, the key hanging behind a board in the women's restroom marked Maintenance. It sounds like a movie, I know, but it was the best I could do without anyone following me. Inside is the flash drive with the audio and screenshots, and a crumpled receipt for the cash ticket purchase with the time. The ticket clerk recognized me when I went back there yesterday. He remembers the girl in the cap. Helena nodded, her throat aching. I'll get this key to Daniel, she promised. Ligia pressed her lips together, as if holding back more to say, and then relented. There's someone else you need to meet. A long-time security guard at the bus station, Mr. Osvaldo. He told me the cameras at Gate B mysteriously failed that night due to maintenance, but he has a habit of saving the backup of the last 48 hours on his own flash drive, out of paranoia, and out of fear of the manager, who's always erasing tapes to buy time. He told me he saw the girl with the cap being blocked by a tall suit-wearing man who tried to pull her arm. She escaped, ran, and got on the bus with the driver's help. The security guard swore to me. Helena's heart skipped a beat. Who was the man? He didn't recognize the face. He just said the guy was wearing a pendant with the initials M.L. Marta, Donna Beatrice's nurse, once told me that the Moretti's private security team is outsourced by M.L. Proteções. Coincidence or not, it's a clue. I'll talk to Daniel this afternoon. I just needed to look you in the eye before I put my name on this. The agent approached, signaling the end of time. The 2 women exchanged a look that already felt like a bond. Thank you, Helena said, in a whisper that carried gratitude and desperation. Take care of yourself and take care of your son. I'm getting out of here. I need to get out. When the door closed behind Helena, Ligia kept her hands on the cold table for a moment. Then she stood up on shaky legs, but lighter. Outside, she gathered the last of her courage and sent a short message to Daniel. Locker 23, Aurora Station. Hurry. Daniel was, at that very moment, in a cafe near the newspaper, his laptop open and 3 windows, flashing notifications. His editor wanted a new story, hotter, more incisive. A lawyer friend urged caution to avoid being sued for defamation, and an anonymous DM promised information in exchange for anonymity. When he saw Ligia's name at the top of the screen, he bolted out of his chair so fast he spilled coffee on the tabletop. Locker 23, Aurora Station. Hurry! Two things hit him at once. The fear of being led into a trap and the certainty that this was the kind of intuition that separates a live investigation from an obituary. He closed his laptop, paid the bill at the counter without waiting for change, and dove into traffic on his battered scooter, dodging honking horns like someone navigating a maze on a timer. At the prison, Helena returned to her cell in a cloud of embers. Donna Zuzu, the oldest inmate who shared the space with her, realized immediately that something had changed. "Your eye is alive again," she commented, wrapping the blanket around her thin legs. "An angel appeared." Helena smiled for the first time in days. Maybe one or two, but an angel with fear and with proof. "So hold this thread and pull. When the cloth tears, it's hard to sew it back together," Zuzu said, with the wisdom of someone who has seen many people fall. At school, Anna Clara faced her own judgment. During recess, two girls laughed loudly as she passed, imitating sirens. A boy commented, loud enough to hurt, "So, the kidnapper's daughter?" Anna Clara stopped. Her stomach rose to her throat. She thought of the video she had recorded at night alone in her room, explaining who her mother was, looking into the camera as if facing a judge. She thought of the courage she had lacked to post it. And then she did something she hadn't done since it all began. She took a deep breath and replied, "My mother is innocent, and when you prove it, you'll have to swallow your own poison." He turned away before the tears could fall and went to the library, where the librarian, Mrs. Ruth, pretended not to see the wet gleam in the girl's eyes and offered a book as if extending a hand. "Stories of Strong People. Take it." Daniel arrived at Aurora Station with a sinking feeling. The lobby seemed like an anthill of people rushing about, voices echoing, metallic announcements calling out destinations with made-up names. He looked for the women's restroom and remembered he couldn't go in. "Sorry, it's urgent. I need to check something for work. There's a board with a key on the back." He tried to explain to the first employee he passed. The woman looked with the impatience of someone who's heard too many excuses. "Sir, I don't have time." Daniel then saw a woman in a cleaning uniform pushing a cart. She had a tired face and kind eyes. "Ma'am, please, I'm a reporter. I really need to retrieve a key hidden over there. It's to help an innocent woman. I can't go in. Can you get it for me?" "I'll explain. The police can come? I'll give you my ID." She studied him for 2 long seconds. "Wait here for me. If you're lying, I'll scream." She disappeared behind the door. Every minute was worth a month. When she returned, she held a piece of tape between her fingers with a small key stuck to the back. Yes, it was. Behind the maintenance board, and now, Daniel felt his soul return to his body. "Now I owe you an exclusive interview when this becomes a documentary," he joked, trying to ease the tremor in his hands. He headed for the row of lockers. Key 23 made a click. That sounded like a gunshot in the private silence of his chest. The metal creaked, and the compartment opened to reveal a thick, unmarked manila envelope. Inside was a silver flash drive, 2 crumpled sheets of paper with copies of receipts, Vila do Farol ticket, 10:53 p.m., cash payment, window 7, and 3 photos printed on plain paper, one of a black nylon backpack, another of a dark cap, and the third blurry, but enough to sink a certainty into Daniel's stomach, the silhouette of a young woman in profile, her chin all too reminiscent of Isabella Moretti's official photos. He closed the locker, stuffed everything into his jacket pocket, and almost ran out. He couldn't see, the man in the simple suit, talking on his cell phone, who looked up from his newspaper when he heard him thank the cleaning lady. The man stood still for a second, then stood, following at a distance. In his apartment's makeshift office, Daniel turned on the recorder, isolated the audio, and opened. The flash drive on a machine disconnected from the internet, as he had done other times when handling sensitive material. The first folder was labeled Isa. Inside, 6 audio files with dates and timestamps. He pressed play. The voice was young, choked, but firm. "Ligia, it's me. I can't do it anymore. He said if I try to leave again, they'll lock me in a clinic. I'm not crazy. I just want to be able to breathe without asking permission. Meet me at the terminal, please. I'll buy the ticket. I'll wear a cap. If I disappear, forgive me." The second recording came with ambient noise like that of a terminal. "There's a guy following me. I think he's security. ML pendant around his neck. I'm going in as soon as boarding opens. If I fall off the map, it'll be because I made it." Daniel rested his forehead on his hand for 3 seconds. It wasn't just evidence. It was a person gasping for air. He took a deep breath and called Helena's defense. The lawyer answered tensely. Daniel didn't. Beat around the bush. I have audio recordings of Isabella with the date and time talking about the escape, citing ML Proteções Security. I have proof of cash. I have a witness from the bus station. I'll file copies with a notary now and send everything to you and the judge with a request for an extraordinary hearing. The sentence can't be handed down without this. On the other end, silence, and then a sigh that seemed to ooze years of helplessness. Send everything. I'll file the petition. Today, and thank you. There was a knock on the door. Daniel froze. No one had scheduled a visit. He looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. A shadow moved at the end of the hall. He instinctively took a photo through the crack and, upon enlarging it, saw the subtle glint of a metal pendant on the chest of a man pretending to check his cell phone. ML. Daniel held his breath, turned off the office lights, waited for his adrenaline to subside, and sent 3 quick messages. One to his lawyer, one to Ligia, I received it, I'm alive, take care, and one to a contact who owed him favors at the police station. I need a discreet patrol car to escort me to the registry office. It's hot, ML, at my door. The request was granted 20 minutes later. When he went downstairs, he saw the patrol car on the corner of the street. The man with the pendant had disappeared, or was watching from another corner, unseen. In the prison, Helena prayed. Not a prayer of ready-made words, but a sincere dialogue with something above her. Let the truth move faster than evil, she pleaded. Zuzu snored softly, arms crossed over her chest. In that long night, hope made a discreet but persistent sound, like a drip that never tires. The next morning, social media woke up with a bang. Whereas Isabella shared the space with Helena é Inocente. Ana Clara's video, finally posted, was shared in droves. In it, the girl said her mother's name, recalled the lunchboxes Helena made for neighbors, when she had leftovers, and recounted the way she would rest her forehead against hers when the world seemed too heavy. At the end, Ana Clara pleaded, if you're a parent or someone's child, think about what it would be like if your favorite person was arrested for something they didn't do. That's all I ask. Around noon, a notification popped up on the phones of those following the case. Judge schedules extraordinary hearing to review new evidence. Helena's lawyer called her a few minutes later, and his voice was filled with a smile. We bought time and we found light. Helena leaned her head against the fresh cement of the wall and let the tears flow, unashamed. Across the city, Augusto Moretti clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. Who's leaking this? He demanded, his voice low and dangerous. The security chief swallowed hard. We're investigating, sir, but it's noise. Don't hold back. Augusto knew when a tide was turning. He'd spent years riding currents, riding waves. But this one, for some reason, already smelled like a storm, and storms sometimes don't ask permission to enter. Night fell again. In the high window of the cell, a rectangle of dark sky promised something Helena didn't dare name. Until Zuzu, without opening her eyes, spoke with the sweet certainty of someone who's seen the world mend itself. Girl, when the truth decides to wake up, not even the noise of the rich can put it back to sleep. If you feel a turn of events approaching, tell us in the comments what you think the bus station camera footage is about and who the man with the ML pendant was. Want Part 5, with the extraordinary viewership, the confrontation with security guard Osvaldo, and the chain reaction in the Moretti family. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell. The next twist is coming strong. The morning of the extraordinary hearing began with a leaden sky, the kind that seems to weigh down the entire city. The courthouse was surrounded by reporters, cameras, and onlookers. Every lens pointed at the main entrance carried not only a hunger for headlines, but also the strange feeling that this day could be a watershed moment. Helena, brought in under escort, felt her heart race as she saw the crowd outside chant her name instead of insults. A few signs fluttered in the wind. Justice for Helena. Where's the truth, Moretti? Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was different. Tense silence, footsteps echoing on the polished floor, lawyers arranging their files, and the judge, stern-faced, ready to listen. Beside the judge, the prosecutor arranged his papers, already looking as if he believed he had won the case. But that morning, something had changed, and everyone knew it. Helena's lawyer took the floor first. He took a sealed envelope from his pocket, placed it on the table and said firmly, "Your Honor, I present new evidence proving that Isabella Moretti left voluntarily, without any interference from my client. This material includes audio, recordings of the missing woman herself, travel receipts and testimonies from people who saw her board the plane to Villa do Farol." A murmur spread like a spark. The judge raised his hand for silence, opened the envelope, and took the flash drive from the officer. "Proceed," he ordered. It was then that Daniel entered the scene. The journalist, called as a witness, walked forward with measured steps, but his rapid breathing betrayed the adrenaline rush. He described how he received the information, how he found the envelope in the cloakroom, and how he verified the audio files. The forensic technician called by the defense then confirmed the authenticity of the files, stating that the voice in the audio files matched Isabella's vocal pattern 98%. The prosecutor tried to interrupt, arguing that it could be a forgery, but the judge asked everyone to wait. The speakers in the courtroom were turned on, and then, for the first time, everyone heard Isabella's voice. "I'm not crazy. I just want to be able to breathe without asking permission. Meet me at the terminal, please. I'll buy the ticket. I'll wear a cap. If I disappear, forgive me." The silence that followed was absolute. It wasn't just proof. It was a living scream, a painful confession that pierced every corner of the room. Helena closed her eyes, holding back tears. Ana Clara, sitting behind her, clutched her grandmother's hands and wept softly, feeling that, for the first time, the world was listening to her. "Mother." The judge urged calm, but he couldn't hide his shock. "Does the defense have any more witnesses?" That's when they called Osvaldo, the bus station security guard. A simple man in a worn uniform with calloused hands and a hoarse voice, he recounted what he saw. It was a young girl wearing a cap and a backpack. She looked scared. A tall man in a suit tried to block her way. I noticed a pendant around her neck with the letters M and L. The bus driver intervened and let her in. After that, the camera filming that gate and went black. I became suspicious and kept a copy of the video for myself. The revelation was like dynamite. The judge immediately demanded the video be released. The screen was turned on, and everyone watched the scene in black and white. The young woman in the cap trying to dodge, the man trying to hold her back, the hurried rush to the bus, the driver's quick intervention. The image was not clear, but the size, silhouette, and movement made it clear. The T.E. young woman was Isabella. The audience rose to its feet in a frenzy of whispers. The prosecutor rubbed his temples, visibly disconcerted. Outside, reporters broadcast live every update. Hashtags soared, and the social media trend shifted from doubt to certainty, from accusations to support. Helena Livre began to rise like a wave. Meanwhile, Augusto Moretti, watching television in his mansion, punched the arm of his chair. The unlit cigarette trembled between his fingers. He called his security. "Chief, you promised this would never come to light." The response was a long silence until the deep voice said, "Sir, we have a breach, and perhaps someone on our own side is giving it away." Back in court, the judge, after a few minutes of analysis, announced, "In light of the new evidence presented, this court suspends the previous sentence and authorizes an immediate investigation into the company ML Proteções and its possible involvement in the disappearance of Isabella Moretti. Regarding the defendant, Helena Alves, this court is considering her provisional release until the end of the proceedings. Final decision shortly." Helena felt her body weaken. The lawyer held her arm firmly. Ana Clara couldn't take it anymore and ran to her mother, restrained by the guards, but managed to touch her fingers to her mother's handcuffed hand. The audience, which had gathered in large numbers, burst into subdued applause, even though they had been warned to remain silent. The feeling was that the truth was finally breaking through. And you, who's been following this story, do you think Augusto Moretti will be able to suppress the investigation against ML Proteções, or are we about to witness the fall of an empire? Comment below what you would do if you were in Helena's shoes, and subscribe to the channel, because Part 6 will reveal the behind-the-scenes of this power struggle, with unexpected alliances and new enemies emerging along the way. Night fell over the city with a strange weight, as if the clouds covering the sky were made of lead. Outside the courthouse, reporters remained on duty, each trying to coax some comment from the defense, the prosecutor, or any employee who might utter a compromising phrase. Live streams flooded social media, and hashtags associated with Helena's name continued to trend. Inside a makeshift cell, awaiting the final decision on her provisional release, Helena felt each second drag by as if it were a full hour. The echo of the guard's footsteps, the metallic clang of keys against the bars, and the distant murmur of voices put her on high alert. For the first time since her arrest, there was concrete hope, but also a deep fear that Augusto Moretti, with all his power and wealth, would manage to turn the tide again. Across town in the Moretti mansion, the tension was so thick it felt material. Augusto paced his office, the curtains drawn, the bottle of whiskey half empty on the desk. His missing daughter wasn't just a family matter. It was a secret that threatened to destroy years of business deals, contracts, and the image of a perfect family he'd built for society. He called Lorenzo, the head of security, who had already failed to keep the recordings hidden. "I don't pay you to make mistakes. I want every employee searched. I want to know who betrayed us. If this evidence made it to court, it's because someone is playing against us," Augusto said, his voice thick with fury. Lorenzo tried to justify himself. "Sir, there are rumors that Isabella not only left traces, but also had help from someone on the inside. A member of staff may have provided cover. If this is true, we're not just dealing with journalists, but with a conspiracy." Augusto slammed his fist on the table. "Then find out, and quickly. I won't let a maid and a bunch of reporters ruin my legacy." Meanwhile, Daniel reviewed the footage. He knew every detail would be contested, every flaw would be used against Helena. So he spent hours analyzing the video, audio, and testimonies. With each replay, he noticed something new: the fear in Isabella's eyes, the urgency in her gestures, the cap pulled down almost to cover her face. But there was something else. A figure in the corner of the footage, blurred, almost unnoticed. Someone was watching the scene from afar, motionless. Daniel zoomed in as much as he could. The outline of a tall man wearing a dark coat and hat remained static, as if simply waiting. Was he a neutral observer, or someone from Augusto's team? That shadow added another layer of mystery to the case. While Daniel worked, Ana Clara spent the night at her grandmother, Donna Cida's house. The girl's expression wavered between hope and fear. "Grandma, are they really going to let Mommy go?" she asked, her eyes welling up. Donna Cida pulled her into her arms. "Daughter, the truth may take time, but it always comes out. Your mother never did anything wrong, and now the whole world is starting to see it. We just need to have faith and strength." The next morning, the decision came down. Helena would be released on provisional release with electronic monitoring until the end of the trial. When she left the courthouse, still wearing the newly fitted ankle bracelet, she was greeted by a sea of cameras. The flashes blinded her, but when she saw Ana Clara running toward her and throwing herself into her arms, all the invisible handcuffs she was wearing seemed to break for a few seconds. The embrace was long and emotional, accompanied by applause and tears, even from strangers. But amidst the emotion, Helena knew that her freedom was fragile. At any moment, Augusto could counterattack, manipulate evidence, or even use violence to silence her. In the following days, the power struggle intensified. Television programs competed for exclusive interviews. Some tabloid channels distorted the facts, trying to paint Helena as an opportunist, taking advantage of the situation to gain public attention. However, in turn, support for Helena grew on social media. Women's groups shared her story as a symbol of the fight against injustice, and even human rights organizations began to pressure the justice system to investigate the Morettis more thoroughly. Meanwhile, Daniel received an anonymous message on his cell phone. It was a short video, sent from an unidentified number. In it, Isabella appeared in a simple room, speaking hurriedly. "If you're seeing this, it means I couldn't come back. Don't blame Helena. She helped me. The truth about my father is much worse than you imagine. Before finishing, the video abruptly cut off. Daniel froze. That recording could be the key to dismantling Augusto's empire once and for all, but it was also incredibly dangerous. The fact that he had received it meant that someone within the heiress's network was trying to communicate, but also that they were being watched. He went to Helena's house that night to show her the video. Upon seeing it, she brought her hands to her face, crying silently. My God, she was telling the truth the whole time. I need to find this girl. It's not just my life, it's hers too. Daniel grabbed her shoulders. And that's exactly what Moretti won't allow. But we have an advantage. The public is now on our side. His every misstep, every attempt at manipulation will be watched. What we need is more evidence, and fast. While the conversation was taking place, a black car was parked across the street, headlights off. Two men were watching the house, communicating by radio. Target at home, the journalist is also here, awaiting instructions. The war had left the courtroom and was now advancing into the streets, into the daily lives of Helena, Ana Clara, and all those who dared to help them. And you, who have followed every detail of this story, do you believe Isabella is still alive and in hiding, or that the Moretti family will do everything they can to silence any trace of her? Leave your theory in the comments, like and subscribe so you don't miss the next part, because part 7 will delve even deeper into the Moretti family's dark secrets and the devastating consequences of the search for the truth. The early morning was silent, but for Helena, sleep seemed an impossible luxury. Ever since she'd set foot outside the prison, every street noise seemed suspicious. Every shadow on the wall had taken on a menacing appearance. She paced the small living room of her house, watching Ana Clara sleep on. The couch, exhausted after insisting on staying by her mother's side, never leaving her side for a minute. Outside, the lookout wasn't just police. The black car parked across the street remained motionless, with two men making no effort to hide their rigid posture. They were there to observe, control, and intimidate. Helena, noticing, closed the curtains with trembling hands, but didn't let her fear show in front of her daughter. Meanwhile, at the Moretti mansion, pressure mounted. Augusto called an emergency meeting with his closest circle of advisors and lawyers. In the luxurious room, lit by golden chandeliers, sat men in ties, cold-eyed security guards, and in the background, the family matriarch, Donna Selina, who watched silently. "We're losing control of the narrative," Augusto said, slamming his whiskey glass down on the table. "Social media is painting that woman as a martyr, and my daughter as a victim of a gilded prison. This can't continue. I demand immediate action." One of the lawyers took a deep breath before replying, "Sir, the audio and video have already been verified. Challenging them may sound desperate. Perhaps the best strategy is to question Helena's reputation, to show that she's not as innocent as she seems." "You don't understand," Augusto interrupted, his deep voice reverberating throughout the room. "This isn't just about her. If Isabella really reappears, all the secrets I've been keeping will go with her. We need to make sure she stays off the board." Donna Selina, who had remained silent until then, raised her weary eyes. "You're repeating the same mistakes, Augusto. Your daughter ran away because she couldn't stand living in your shadow anymore. The more you try to smother it, the more this fire will grow." He glared at her but didn't respond. He knew that in a way his mother was right, but he couldn't admit weakness in front of everyone. Across town, Daniel reanalyzed the anonymous video sent to his cell phone. Each frame was a clue, and even a sudden interruption could hide crucial information. He turned to a friend who was a technology expert who helped him restore corrupted sections. With effort, they recovered a few extra seconds. Isabella, looking directly into the camera, said in a trembling voice, "My father isn't who you think. He's involved in something that—" The file ended there, unfinished. Daniel showed it to Helena the next day. Hearing those words, she felt a chill run through her body. If she managed to record this, it means she's alive, but it also means she's in danger. I can't just stand there waiting for his next move. I need to go after her." Daniel hesitated. "Helena, you're already in their sights. Augusto won't hesitate to destroy you, especially now. But if you decide to go after Isabella, you won't be alone. I'll go with you." Ana Clara, who was listening from the kitchen, intervened. "If Isabella ran away from her own father, it's because she was afraid of him. We need to help. Mom, don't give up now." Helena's heart was divided between the instinct to protect her daughter and the urgency to save a young woman who, like herself, was imprisoned by injustice. That same morning, new developments began to emerge. A reporter from an international broadcaster contacted Daniel, claiming to have received confidential documents about the company ML Proteções, linked to the Moretti family. The documents indicated involvement in illegal surveillance operations and even suspicious disappearances of other people in the past. It was a potential scandal, Meanwhile, Lorenzo, the Moretti's head of security, received clear orders. Find out who's helping Helena and this journalist. I want names, I want addresses, and I want it before the sun sets. His team hit the streets, searching cafes, libraries, and even Helena's neighborhood. Anyone who had spoken to her was marked as a possible enemy. That afternoon, Helena was surprised by an unexpected visitor. A middle-aged woman in simple clothes knocked on her door. My name is Marta. I worked at the Moretti mansion for many years. I know things that can help you. Suspicious, Helena invited her in. Marta said she had witnessed several fights between Augusto and Isabella. She cried a lot, saying she wanted to run away, that she couldn't stand being controlled anymore. One day, I heard Augusto saying that if she dared expose the family, he would make her disappear, as he had done to others. Helena's eyes widened. Others? Marta nodded, her voice low, almost a whisper. Employees, security guards, even a driver. They all disappeared after crossing Augusto, but no one ever said anything, because they were all afraid. I myself kept quiet for years, but when I saw your face on TV accused of something you didn't do, I felt I had to speak out. The pieces were beginning to fall into place in a puzzle much darker than anyone had imagined. It wasn't just about a rebellious heiress, running away from home, but about a web of secrets buried within the Moretti family. Helena looked at Daniel. If we put Marta on the stand, the case changes completely. He agreed, but added, and it also increases the danger. If Augusto finds out she spoke to you, he won't spare the consequences. Night fell again, and Helena lay down next to Ana Clara, who slept peacefully, unaware of the magnitude of the approaching storm. Before closing her eyes, Helena whispered to herself, I won't run anymore. If they want to destroy me, they'll have to face the truth. Far away, Augusto was watching his security team's reports. When he learned that Marta had visited Helena, his expression turned to pure fury. Then she chose the wrong side, he muttered, before ordering, do what needs to be done. The war for truth was just beginning, and the next steps would be decisive. And you, who have been following this twist-filled plot, do you believe Helena and Daniel will be able to expose all the Moretti's secrets before it's too late? Comment your opinion, like and subscribe, because Part 8 will show how far Augusto is willing to go to protect his empire, and how far Helena will be willing to resist to protect her daughter and save Isabella. The early morning wind seemed colder than usual when Helena woke with a start to a metallic noise coming from the backyard. Her heart raced, and she ran to the window, only to realize the gate's lock had been forced. There was no one in sight, but the heavy silence betrayed this as no coincidence. It was a warning. She woke Daniel, who was sleeping on the couch, her hand on his shoulder. They've come into the backyard, she whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel got up quickly, went to the kitchen, and grabbed a knife. There were no signs of forced entry on the door, but the message was clear. Augusto knew every step they took, and the feeling of vulnerability grew like a suffocating shadow. In the morning, Marta returned, even more nervous than the day before. They're following me, she said, her hands trembling. Since I left here yesterday, I've felt their eyes on my back. I know their methods. They won't stop until I'm silenced. Daniel gripped her arm firmly. Then we'll protect you. But we need to turn what you know into solid evidence. If we can get your voice heard by the courts and the media, it will be much harder for them to erase your story. Helena watched Marta with a mixture of gratitude and fear. Each new witness became a target, and the responsibility weighed even more heavily on her shoulders. Ana Clara, sensing the tense atmosphere, asked softly, Mommy, we'll be okay, right? Helena smiled, even though inside she was shattered. Come on, my love. Nothing will separate us. Meanwhile, at the Moretti mansion, Augusto welcomed Lorenzo into his office. She's talking too much. I need you to take care of this now, he ordered bluntly. Lorenzo nodded, but there was something in his eyes that betrayed discomfort. He had worked alongside Augusto for years, but the idea of pursuing a former employee who only spoke the truth seemed a bit far-fetched. Still, he knew loyalty came with a price, and disobedience, a sentence. The external climate was also beginning to weigh against the Morettis. The foreign journalist who had contacted Daniel published a preliminary article raising questions about the company ML Proteções and its shady contracts with public and private agencies. The text didn't mention Helena directly, but associated the Moretti surname with a network of silence and fear. Social media was buzzing. Hashtags with Augusto's and his daughter's names were spreading, and public opinion, previously divided, began to tilt dangerously against the family. Feeling the siege closing in, Augusto decided to change tactics. If the media was against him, he would create his own narrative. He hired a marketing team to spread false news about Helena, alleged old debts, shady relationships, even accusations of involvement with criminals. The intention was clear: to tarnish her image until no one would believe in her innocence. Helena discovered this when, upon opening her phone, she saw her face plastered across questionable websites with headlines like "Former maid implicated in international gang." Desperation took over, but Daniel held her by the shoulder. That's what they want, to see you crumble. But every lie they make up only shows how desperate they are, and we have something they don't: the truth. That same day, Marta revealed a crucial detail she hadn't mentioned before. I saw Isabella hiding things. She kept papers inside a blue, leather-bound notebook. A diary, perhaps. Whenever Augusto entered her room, she would run to hide this notebook under the loose floorboards. Helena felt her heart race. If this diary still exists, it could be the definitive proof. Daniel agreed, but he knew the mission would be risky. Entering the Moretti mansion was like walking through minefields. Every corner had cameras, guards, and watchful eyes, but the possibility of finding the diary rekindled the flame of hope. That night, as Helena pondered her next steps, Ana Clara slept beside her, whispering in her sleep, "We will win, Mom, we will win." These simple words were a reminder that there was no room for giving up. The next day brought unexpected news. An anonymous email arrived in Daniel's inbox, with coordinates and a short message. "If you want to find Isabella, follow this path, but come alone." Suspicion was immediate. Was this a trap set up by Augusto, or was someone genuinely trying to help them? Helena and Daniel argued for a long time. Marta, fearing for their lives, pleaded, "Don't go. This smells like an ambush." But Helena knew that every clue could be the difference between finding Isabella alive or dead. They decided to take the risk. On the appointed night, they drove along deserted roads to a remote, almost rural area. The road was dark, lit only by headlights. When they reached the designated spot, they found an abandoned cabin. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the sound of crickets. Inside, there was no sign of Isabella, but on a dusty table lay a backpack. Inside, a blue, leather-bound notebook. Helena picked it up with trembling hands. She opened the pages and found Isabella's notes. Accounts of fights with her father, records of veiled threats, names of people who had mysteriously disappeared, and even financial documents that could link Augusto to corruption schemes. But the most striking was a page where Isabella wrote, "If something happens to me, it won't be an accident. My father knows everything. My life is in danger." Helena felt her legs weaken. Here was proof that they were dealing not just with an unjust accusation, but with an empire of lies sustained by fear. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed outside. Daniel turned off the flashlight and pulled Helena behind a closet. Through the window, they saw two armed men prowling the cabin. It was confirmation. They had been followed. The silence turned to pure tension. Helena clutched the diary to her chest as if it were her salvation. Daniel, breathing deeply, prepared to act. But before the men could enter, a distant siren echoed down the road. The henchmen looked at each other and quickly retreated, disappearing into the darkness. Helena and Daniel seized the opportunity and ran to the car, speeding off. Without looking back. The diary was in their hands, but now the war had escalated to a dangerous level. It wasn't just Helena's reputation at stake, it was everyone's survival. When they arrived home, Marta wept with relief at seeing them alive. Helena showed her the diary, and the three understood that the next step would be to make it public. But they knew that from that moment on, Augusto would have no more scruples. And you, who have been following each chapter of this secret-filled plot, do. You believe Helena will be able to use the diary to turn the tide? Or will Augusto, with all his power and influence, still find a way to silence the truth? Comment your thoughts, like, and subscribe, because in Part 9, Isabella's diary will become a weapon as powerful as it is dangerous, and the consequences could be irreversible. The sun hadn't yet risen when Helena opened Isabella's blue diary again. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages, laden with pain and secrets. Each word the heiress wrote was a plunge into a world of fear, of a father who hid behind the facade of a respectable millionaire while manipulating lives like disposable pieces on a chessboard. Daniel, sitting beside her, watched intently. "These pages aren't just a rant," he said firmly. "They're a denunciation. It's almost as if Isabella foresaw what would happen." Helena agreed, but the weight on her chest grew. "If we put this in the wrong hands, they could destroy the evidence or turn it against us. But if we remain silent, Augusto will remain free." Marta, who had barely slept, got up and approached, her eyes red with worry. "You don't understand. That diary is a death sentence. Augusto won't stop until he gets it back. You need to decide what to do now, before it's too late." Daniel knew there was no turning back. "We have to take this public. Not the police, because many are already bought off. We need something bigger, someone who can't be easily silenced." That's when they remembered the foreign journalist who had already published a preliminary article about the Morettis. Helena reluctantly picked up the phone and typed the message, "I have concrete evidence. We need to meet." The response arrived within minutes. "Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Safe place. Come discreetly." That night was long. Helena lay beside Anna Clara, who slept peacefully, oblivious to the danger. She looked at her daughter's serene face and felt a surge of strength rise within her. "I will fight to the end for you," she thought, stroking the girl's hair. It was more than survival. It was ensuring a future where her daughter would not be marked by the weight of injustice. The next morning, they headed to their meeting point, a discreet cafe in a neighborhood far from the city center. The journalist, a middle-aged man named Thomas, was already waiting for them at a table in the back. His attentive eyes conveyed seriousness, but also caution. Helena placed the diary on the table. "This could change everything," she said almost in a whisper. Thomas opened it, read a few pages and sighed deeply. "It's explosive, but you need to understand, publishing something like this isn't just about exposing Augusto. It's about messing with much bigger interests, with people willing to kill to protect their secrets." Daniel leaned forward. "We are already marked. What we want is for the truth to be heard, for the world to know who the Morettis really are." Thomas nodded slowly. "Then I'll need time to authenticate this material, cross-check information, and protect my sources. But I promise if this airs, no one will look at this family the same way again." As they discussed the details, Helena noticed a man standing on the sidewalk across the street. Sunglasses, black coat, standing there too long to be a coincidence. Her heart raced. "Daniel, I think we're being followed." Daniel glanced quickly and recognized the posture of one of Augusto's henchmen. "Damn. They already know about the diary." Thomas closed the notebook immediately. "Go away. Now, I'll take care of this." But Helena hesitated. "If you stay with him, you'll be in danger." Thomas smiled, albeit with a certain heaviness. "The danger is already made. If I don't publish, I'll be betraying not only you but all the other victims, trust me." They left through the back door, walking quickly to their car. The man in the sunglasses headed in the opposite direction, but Helena knew they wouldn't get rid of him so easily. Back home, the tension grew with each passing second. Anna Clara, innocent, asked when they could return to a normal life, playing in the park, visiting friends. Helena had no answers, only a lump in her throat that seemed to tighten more with each passing day. That same night, Augusto received a call. They handed the diary over to a journalist, Lorenzo said, trying to keep his voice steady. On the other end of the line, Augusto's silence was more threatening than any shout. "If this becomes public, it's over for us," he finally replied, his tone icy. Augustus then ordered, "Bring Helena to me, whatever the cost." Meanwhile, Daniel received an encrypted message from Thomas. "I was able to confirm some of the information. I will publish it soon. Get ready." Helena felt a mixture of relief and fear. Relief because the truth was beginning to come out. Fear because she knew the counterattack would be brutal. It didn't take long. The next day, a flood of fake news emerged. Helena was portrayed as a liar, manipulative, and even the person truly responsible for Isabella's disappearance. Doctored videos circulated online, showing distorted statements, attempting to portray the victim as the villain. Daniel pounded the table in anger. "They're turning everything against us." Helena, taking a deep breath, replied, "That just shows how desperate they are. If it were a lie, they wouldn't need to make up more lies. But the worst was yet to come. In the middle of the afternoon, there was a knock on the door. Helena opened it and found an envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo. Anna Clara playing in the schoolyard, clearly taken without anyone noticing. On the back was a note. "Stop now, or your daughter will be next." The ground seemed to disappear beneath Helena's feet. She fell to her knees, tears streaming uncontrollably. Daniel grabbed the photo and crumpled it angrily. "They've crossed the line. Now it's not just you or me, it's Anna Clara." Marta hugged Helena, trying to calm her, but her own voice was shaking. "They won't stop. We need to get out of here. Hide you." Helena, however, stood up with unexpected firmness. "No. If we run, they win. But if we fight, maybe we can get justice. I won't spend my life running. I want my daughter to grow up knowing that her mother fought." That night, Helena gazed at the starry sky from her bedroom window. She held Anna Clara's hand, who was already asleep, and thought about how fate had turned her life upside down. From an invisible maid, she was now the centerpiece of a battle against a millionaire empire. The fear was real, but her determination grew even stronger. She knew the war was far from over. The diary was just the beginning, and Augusto Moretti would do anything to silence the truth. But Helena was also ready to do anything to protect her daughter and clear her name. And you, who have been following every twist and turn of this story, do you believe Helena will be able to resist the threats and keep her daughter safe? Or do you think Augusto will still have enough strength to turn the tide? Leave your opinion in the comments, like the video, and subscribe so you don't miss part 10, where the struggle between truth and power reaches a point of no return, and each choice could cost a life. The day dawned grey, carrying a sense of foreboding that tightened Helena's chest. Every step inside the house seemed to echo the tension in the air, making it impossible to ignore the fact that Isabella's diary had unleashed a silent but deadly war. Daniel was making coffee in the kitchen, his eyes alert, checking every movement on the street, every suspicious car that slowly passed. Marta, nervous, kept checking her cell phone, trying to catch any warning signs. Helena sat at the table holding Anna Clara in her lap. The girl played with a small teddy bear, unaware of the danger lurking within their lives. But for Helena, her daughter's innocence was the fuel that strengthened her. Resolve. With each word of the diary she reread, the sense of urgency grew. Augusto Moretti was no joke. He used power, money, and manipulation to control lives, and now, with Helena in the way, he wouldn't hesitate to attack with all his might. The phone rang. It was Thomas. "They know you have the diary. I had to speed up the publication of some preliminary information to protect my sources and catch Augusto off guard. But they'll try to counterattack," he said seriously. Daniel frowned. "Counterattack how? Is he going to pursue us even more?" Thomas sighed. "Exactly. But there's a chance to turn the tide in our favor if you remain steadfast and strategic." Helena took a deep breath. "I can't run away. If they think I'm afraid, Augusto will win. I have to face this head-on for the diary, for the truth, and for Anna Clara." They then decided that Helena would meet with Thomas to deliver more details from the diary, while Daniel and Marta would ensure the safety of the house and Anna Clara. The tension was palpable. Every minute counted. Upon arriving at the designated location, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, Helena smelled the damp, cold smell of concrete. Thomas was already there, holding a folder with additional documents and photos. "Look, Helena, what I found," he said, opening the folder. Photographs of Augusto with influential people, suspicious contracts, money transactions, and evidence of corruption appeared before her. Helena could hardly believe it. Every page confirmed everything she suspected. Augusto was not just an absent and manipulative father, but a man capable of crimes beyond imagination. "This is enormous," he murmured, fingering the papers with trembling hands. Thomas continued, "If this gets out, he'll lose everything. But it also becomes more dangerous for you. He'll try to silence everyone close to him." Helena nodded, but fear could no longer paralyze her. "Then let's go on the offensive. We'll publish this at a strategic moment when he least expects it. We can't hesitate." Meanwhile, Augusto was furious. Lorenzo showed up at his mansion with the news that Helena had met with Thomas. "They're trying to expose our family. If you don't act now, everything will be lost," Lorenzo said, sweating under the strain. Augusto, frozen, slowly rose, his eyes fixed on the office window. They have no idea what it means to defy me. Prepare the containment team. She won't escape. Back at the warehouse, Helena and Thomas discussed their dissemination strategy. The idea was to circumvent the corrupt police and local media by sending parts of the diary and documentary evidence to international media outlets and independent investigative channels. Every step needed to be calculated, every movement precise. As she planned, Helena realized the warehouse wasn't as safe as it seemed. Footprints on the concrete floor revealed someone had been there recently. "Thomas, we're not alone," she said, sounding alarmed. Thomas quickly closed the folder. "Stay behind me. If they're on Augustus's side, we can't underestimate the danger." Indeed, voices began to echo through the corridors and shadows appeared on the walls. Helena felt her heart race. It was the first time she had faced Augusto's henchmen directly. Their every step was methodical, calculated, and the tension in the air was almost suffocating. The confrontation began silently, with Helena and Thomas moving in the shadows, trying to escape unseen. But a misstep caused a door to creak open loudly, betraying their presence. "There," one of the men shouted, and the chase began. Helena ran with an imaginary Anna Clara in her arms, visualizing every aisle of the warehouse as a death trap. Thomas brought up the rear, using objects from the environment to create obstacles. Adrenaline pulsed through his veins. Every second was a matter of life or death. The diary, still in his mind, seemed to glow with the promise of justice, but also with the weight of the risk it carried. When they finally managed to escape, Helena felt like she had been through a trial by fire, but she knew this was only the first physical battle. Augustus would not back down. The war was just beginning. Back in the temporary safety of a friend's house, Helena sat exhausted but more determined than ever. Every detail in the diary, every piece of evidence gathered, was now a weapon against Augustus's empire. She looked at Anna Clara, who was sleeping peacefully, and felt a wave of emotion. Protecting that child had become the reason for her own survival. "I won't give up. No matter what happens, we will win. And you, who have been following this story, can you imagine how Helena will protect Anna Clara while facing Augusto and his empire of power? Leave your comment, like the video, and subscribe so you don't miss part 11, where the danger intensifies and every decision can change the fate of everyone involved. Night fell heavily over the city, as if it too knew something dark was about to happen. Helena couldn't sleep. Every distant sound seemed like a warning. Every shadow on the wall seemed to move with hostile intentions. Anna Clara slept peacefully, unaware of the approaching battle, and this contrast only strengthened Helena's determination. She knew that protecting her daughter was her absolute priority, but she also sensed that the moment to act against Augusto Moretti was approaching. Daniel scoured the safe house, adjusting makeshift security cameras, while Marta double-checked all emergency phone contacts. The air was thick with tension, almost palpable, as if the entire world were holding its breath. Helena mentally reviewed every detail of Isabella's diary and every piece of evidence gathered with Thomas. Each page, each entry, was a thread that could reveal Augusto's web of crimes, and she knew he was attentive, watching, waiting for any slip-up. Meanwhile, Augusto was awake. He had returned to his mansion with a chill. Down his spine, something he rarely felt. Lorenzo stood by his side, reporting on Helena and Thomas's every move. "They're moving too fast. If we don't act now, she might expose everything. We have to be more cunning than ever." Augusto, normally impassive, clenched his fists. Anger and frustration had turned into an almost cruel determination. He could not allow Helena to dethrone his empire or expose his darkest secrets. Back at the safe house, Helena received an anonymous call, the voice on Augusto. The other end was firm and threatening, but disguised. "Stop immediately. Any misstep and the child will pay the price." Helena swallowed hard, but refused to give in. "You will not intimidate me. Anna Clara is not to blame for Augusto's actions, and I will not stop ever." She hung up the phone and looked at Daniel and Marta. "They came to scare us. We need to be more careful, but we will not back down." The next morning, Helena and Thomas met again, this time in a busy, crowded public place, impossible to track any movement. Thomas brought new evidence, emails, recordings, records of suspicious transactions, and evidence of collusion between Augusto and powerful figures. Each document reinforced how dangerous Augusto was, but also revealed loopholes that could be exploited. Helena analyzed everything with a watchful eye, aware that any wrong decision could cost her dearly. As they discussed strategy, Helena noticed something that made her heart race. Two men were watching her, from a strategic distance, adjusting their posture as if waiting for a signal. Her instincts screamed they were Augusto's henchmen. Without alerting Thomas, she signaled with a discreet gesture and slowly moved away, blending into the crowd. Thomas, sensing the tension, did the same, and the two managed to blend in with the passers-by. The danger was getting closer, more real, and Helena felt for the first time the weight of vulnerability, but also the strength of her courage. That night, she decided she needed to confront Augusto, not with violence but with intelligence. We can't just react, we need to turn the tables, and to do that, he needs to feel we're in control, even under threat. Daniel agreed, devising plans to use the media and evidence strategically. The idea was to create a storm of information that Augusto couldn't silence. As Helena planned, memories of her past mixed with the tension of the present. The humiliations she had suffered, the contempt of her millionaire father, the feeling of rejection. All of this had shaped her, hardened her, but also taught her that her strength came from resilience and intelligence. Each difficulty she had overcome prepared her for this moment, and she knew the outcome would not only be about justice, but about showing the world that a humble, wronged woman could face an empire and emerge victorious. The next morning, Helena discreetly sent an excerpt from the diary to independent journalists, containing evidence that could not be ignored. At the same time, she coordinated with Thomas to publish more evidence on a major international news portal. Every move was calculated to achieve maximum impact, but also to protect Ana Clara from any direct retaliation from Augusto. However, Augusto's response was immediate. His anger turned to action, and he began using all his influence to undermine Helena. He sent private investigators, paid journalists, and even influential figures in the corporate world to try to discredit the evidence. But Helena, anticipating every move, used Thomas's own network of allies and her own cunning to neutralize each attack. Each step of the battle heightened the tension, leaving the reader, or viewer, wondering who would emerge victorious. Meanwhile, Ana Clara began to notice that her mother was tense, but she didn't understand the details. The child's innocence contrasted with the complexity of the war Helena was facing. In a moment of tenderness, Helena hugged her tightly, whispering, "Don't worry, my love. Mommy will always take care of you. Nothing will separate us." The scene was intensely emotional, showing that, even amidst chaos and injustice, the mother-daughter bond was unbreakable and a driving force impossible to ignore. The chapter intensifies when Helena realizes that Augusto plans to kidnap Ana Clara to directly intimidate her. The revelation comes through an ally infiltrated in the Millionaire's team. Tensions reach a fever pitch, as it's now not just about evidence or strategy, but also about her daughter's safety. Every second becomes critical. Helena devises contingency plans, establishing escape routes and safe locations, and maintaining constant contact with allies, ensuring that any attempt by Augusto is thwarted before it even takes place. As the clock ticks away, Helena reflects on her own strength. She isn't a wealthy woman, nor does she have powerful allies by birth, but she possesses something Augustus never had: courage, emotional intelligence, and unwavering determination. Each challenge strengthens her character and her ability to face adversity. The reader feels the tension build, the danger imminent, and the emotion that permeates the protagonist's every step, making it impossible to tear one's eyes away from the narrative. Part 11 ends with Helena looking at Ana Clara, sitting at the table, holding her small hands in hers, while outside the house, shadows of Augusto's henchmen prowl discreetly. The conflict is about to become inevitable. The suspense is at its peak, and the reader or viewer is left eagerly awaiting the next chapter. Helena knows there is no more room for hesitation. Every decision will now be decisive, and the final battle draws near. And you, who have been following this story, can you imagine how Helena will protect Ana Clara while dismantling Augusto's empire? Leave your comment, like the video, and subscribe so you don't miss part 12, where every secret will be confronted and everyone's fate will be decided. Dawn broke with tension, tinting the sky with hues of red and orange, as if nature itself announced that this would be no ordinary day. Helena didn't sleep. Every movement outside the safe house seemed amplified by her own anxiety. Every sound in the neighborhood seemed like a warning that danger was near. Ana Clara, unaware of what was approaching, still slept, her small eyes closed with absolute trust in her mother's protection. Helena, holding her hands for a moment, made a silent promise. Today everything changes. You will know the truth and no one will be able to separate us. Meanwhile, Augusto Moretti sat in his mansion, surrounded by his fences of power and wealth, but her uneasiness pervaded every corner of his ostentation. Lorenzo burst in, bearing detailed information about Helena's every move. They've advanced faster than we anticipated. If we don't act today, our entire control network could collapse. Augusto, normally calculating, felt frustration for the first time, and his cold eyes gleamed with anger. But anger wasn't enough to intimidate Helena. He needed a more ruthless strategy, decisive action. Helena, realizing time was short, called Thomas to prepare the release of evidence on an international platform. Every email, every recording, every document about Augusto's illicit behavior would be broadcast in a chain, ensuring no room for manipulation or cover-up. But she knew the process needed to be perfect. Any mistake could put Ana Clara at risk. As the city woke, shadows moved around the safe house. Henchmen sent by Augusto prowled discreetly, trying to find breaches. Helena noticed the movement through the security camera system and quickly contacted Daniel. Tension reached a fever pitch, for now it wasn't just about evidence or media. It was a race against time to protect her daughter. Helena reviewed every escape route, every safe spot, and took a deep breath. The endgame was about to begin, in the heart of the city. Helena decided to confront Augusto head-on. She knew any attempt at discreet negotiations would fail. The confrontation needed to be public, strategic, and irrefutable. With Thomas, Marta, and Daniel coordinating every move, Helena prepared to enter the headquarters of one of the largest international news portals, where she would deliver the evidence and allow the world to learn the full extent of Augusto's manipulations and crimes. The excitement grew, and the reader felt the tension in every detail, every meticulous choice Helena made. At the same time, Augusto decided to take drastic action. He planned to kidnap Ana Clara during Helena's movement, believing this would instill fear and control. But Helena anticipated his strategy. As Augusto's plan progressed, she positioned allies in strategic locations, ensuring that every movement was monitored and that any attempt at intimidation was immediately neutralized. The tension was almost palpable, and each second felt like an eternity. The moment of public confrontation arrived. Helena entered the news portal's headquarters with the confidence of someone who knew the truth was on her side. Thomas handed over every piece of evidence, every document, every recording. The editorial team began reviewing, but there was no time for questioning. The story was about to go viral, and Helena knew Augusto would have no way to silence her. Meanwhile, in the outside world, Lorenzo tried to coordinate a response, but every second lost increased the pressure. The moment the first report was published, the world reacted. Comments exploded on social media, accusations began to surface, and public pressure on Augusto became immediate and unsustainable. Accustomed to manipulating news and controlling narratives, he found himself powerless. Helena had transformed the power of truth into an unstoppable weapon, and every strategic move she made was meticulously calculated to protect her and her daughter. Ana Clara, still oblivious to the complexities of the adult world, noticed the change in her surroundings. She looked at Helena, and in her mother's gaze, she found security and strength. The mother-daughter bond, which withstood threats, manipulation, and fear, proved unbreakable. Helena felt a wave of emotion as she realized that every sacrifice, every moment of fear, had been worth it. Justice came not only from courts or evidence, but from the strength of a woman who never gave up. Augusto, publicly, confronted, momentarily retreated, but not without trying one last trick. He mobilized lawyers and political allies to question the credibility of the evidence. But Helena, with every planned step, had neutralized that possibility. Every record, every recording, every independent witness made any manipulation impossible. The power game had finally reversed. The emotional outcome was cemented when Helena and Anna Clara could finally breathe without immediate fear. The humble, wronged woman not only survived the onslaught of a millionaire empire, but also transformed her pain into strength, her injustice into victory, and her courage into an example of resilience. Helena knew that the greatest battle was to overcome fear and prove that a woman could face the world, even with apparent disadvantages, and emerge victorious. The final chapter ends with Helena watching Anna Clara play in the safe house's garden, the sun illuminating their smiles. Every shadow of danger, every threat had been faced, and the sense of triumph was complete. She reflected on everything, the injustice, the pain, the struggle, but also on the courage, intelligence, and determination that transformed her life and that of her daughter. The feeling of victory was not only for having exposed Augusto, but for having preserved Anna Clara's innocence and safety, ensuring a future where fear and injustice would no longer have a place. The video ends with Helena looking directly at the camera, at the audience, with an expression that blends relief, strength, and an invitation to reflection. She symbolizes the courage of each person facing seemingly insurmountable injustices. The narrative concludes with a call to action. If you were inspired by our story, leave a comment, share, like, and subscribe. Together we will show that courage, truth, and justice always prevail.